YNW Melly, real name Jamal Demons, appeared in a Broward County courtroom in plain clothes for the first time in months. His lawyers just submitted paperwork for his immediate release, and the new push to get him out is built on something most people following this case had no idea about: the conditions he's actually been living under while waiting for retrial. Here's what his legal team laid out. For the last 7 years, Melly has been held in solitary confinement, not general population, which is where most inmates awaiting trial stay, but a single concrete cell behind a steel door with a small food slot, a metal toilet and sink, a narrow bed on bare concrete, locked in 23 hours a day, meals passed through the slot, 1 hour of rec time, a shower every other day, no phone access, no visits, no windows. 7 years of that. His mother described what it's been like watching from the outside. "It's heartbreaking, and it makes me feel completely helpless," she said, adding that the Broward Sheriff's Office effectively makes its own rules and answers to no one, that even when they went to court about the mistreatment, the judge said he didn't have jurisdiction over how the jail operates. A psychiatrist named Norman weighed in publicly, referencing the Nelson Mandela Act, which states no person should spend more than 15 days in isolation. Norman, who has never spoken to Melly directly, said he'd never heard of anyone held in isolation for 7 years, comparing it to castaway. He pointed out that the human brain, particularly the frontal cortex, doesn't fully develop until someone is 24 or 25, meaning isolation at that age could cause damage that lasts the rest of Melly's life. And legally, holding someone in solitary confinement for the entire pretrial period like this raises serious questions, especially for someone who hasn't been convicted of anything. A BSO officer's own testimony backed up how extreme this has been. He admitted Melly's cell has been searched every single day for 7 years, and no contraband has ever been found since 2019. He admitted Melly has never had a single altercation, and he admitted Melly hasn't spoken to any family member in 6 years. Melly's lawyers are now pushing for an independent, third-party investigation into his living conditions, confident that anyone outside of law enforcement reviewing it would find it illegal. His mother has also stated publicly that even convicted inmates are allowed phone access and mail, writes her son, who hasn't been convicted of anything, has been denied. Reaction online split fast. Some fans were horrified, arguing a man could effectively die from these conditions before a jury ever gets the chance to find him innocent. Others, like commentator Charleston White, took the opposite position entirely, saying publicly he was glad Melly was being kept locked down, calling him one of the most dangerous people in rap, and arguing the forensic evidence never supported Melly's version of events. And then, right as Melly's case for release looked strongest, something happened that changed the entire conversation. A police interrogation with one of Melly's childhood friends from the YNW group leaked online. In it, the friend claims that YNW Sock Chaser, one of the 2 victims in the case, and someone who acted like the group's big brother, forced Melly into certain acts about a week before his death, and that investigators believe this may have been Melly's motive. In the leaked audio, the friend is heard saying, "Y'all don't know what Sock was doing to me." The timing of that leak, landing right as Melly had his best shot yet at house arrest, raised plenty of eyebrows on its own. Despite the leak, Melly's team stayed confident heading into the bond hearing. They'd reportedly already arranged a house with a pool and a home studio for him to live in and continue making music if granted bond, ahead of next year's trial. Attorney Bradford Cohen represented him at the hearing, which one legal commentator described as functioning almost like a mini-trial, witnesses being called and cross-examined specifically about the psychological effects of prolonged confinement. But this hearing was in front of a new judge, one who had never heard any of the case's original evidence. And that's what gave prosecutors their opening. Prosecutors used the hearing to introduce evidence never previously shown, arguing Melly shouldn't get bond at all. They presented a Facebook photo of Melly with Young Thug, attempting to tie him to YSL and use gang affiliation as a factor in denying release. They also brought in testimony from a former associate claiming that just days before Sock Chaser and YNW Juvie were killed, Melly had reached out to King Von for advice on how to handle a dispute with someone in the streets, the associate testifying that Melly implied his 2 friends were trying to extort him. From there, prosecutors moved into laying out where they believe Melly actually was during the crime itself. They pointed to surveillance footage placing him getting into the back left seat of the vehicle, the seat prosecutors say the shooter occupied, and cellular data placing him at the scene. A state prosecutor directly told the judge, "We know Cortland Henry wasn't the hitter, the defendant was," pointing at Melly. YNW Juvie's mother, who testified she'd known all 4 of the YNW members their entire lives, confirmed on the stand which seat her son sat in and identified Melly as the person who got into the rear driver's side seat. Then came the text messages. According to evidence presented, someone messaged Melly's account asking if he was okay shortly after the crime, and the response read simply, "I did that," followed by a smiley face emoji. Video also surfaced showing Melly dancing in a parking lot with YNW Bortland just hours after the killings, saying on camera, "Regardless of what happened this early morning, he's still out here being very positive." That same video reportedly played a role in pushing Bortland toward a plea deal. Bortland agreed to plead to accessory after the fact, with a sentence of 10 years plus 6 years of probation, minus credit for time already served. And as part of the deal, he agreed to a proffer, meaning he's required to give investigators a full, truthful account of what happened. Commentator DJ Academics broke down why that detail matters so much. A plea to accessory after the fact means Bortland has to legally acknowledge that a murder occurred and that he helped cover it up in some way after the fact, which by itself confirms the crime happened the way prosecutors allege. And because it comes with a proffer agreement, Bortland doesn't just get to plead quietly. He has to tell investigators the full story of what happened inside that car, matching it against what evidence they already have to determine whether he's telling the truth. He isn't required to say Melly's name specifically, but if his account lines up with everything else prosecutors have, the seating, the cellular data, the text messages, it effectively confirms Melly's role regardless. As academics put it, this is a common pattern in cases like this. Someone facing years in prison and a life sentence eventually decides cooperating is the safer bet, trading a shorter sentence for testimony against a co-defendant. He noted he expected Bortland to flip eventually, and that whatever Bortland ultimately tells investigators is likely to point directly at Melly. So where does that leave things right now? Melly's team has a genuinely strong argument that his treatment in solitary for 7 years without a conviction may be illegal, and that argument alone could still result in a change to his conditions or even a bond. But at the same hearing meant to get him released, prosecutors introduced gang ties, eyewitness testimony, forensic placement at the scene, and a text message that reads like a confession. And now, with Bortland's plea deal requiring him to lay out the full story under oath, the case against Melly may be getting stronger at the exact moment his path to freedom looked most promising. 2 very different fights are happening in this case at once. One about whether the state is legally allowed to treat an unconvicted man this way for 7 straight years, and another about whether the evidence against him is now stronger than it's ever been. Both are still very much unresolved, and both are about to collide when this case finally goes back to trial.